Jim Fitzgerald is a research engineer for a major manufacturer of electronic components. Paul Newman is a world-renowned actor, wildly popular with his fans and highly respected within the motion picture industry. Frank Leary, a top mechanic, is the shop foreman at a prominent center for high-performance sports cars. Logan Blackburn is a Midwestern businessman who, in addition to owning a printing supply firm, has investments in real estate and the stock market. And what do these four men have in common? Each is a racing driver, an expert in one of the world's most dangerous and demanding sports. They will be racing head-to-head in the Sports Car Club of America's National Championships on a twisting 2.5-mile course in the wooded hills of Georgia. Its name, Road Atlanta. Hi, I'm Sam Posey, and I'm in the pits at Road Atlanta. This is familiar ground to me because I've raced here many, many times in the course of a career which I've been lucky enough to race all over the world in such classics as the 24 Hours of Le Mans and the Indianapolis 500. But I won't be racing at Road Atlanta this weekend. Instead, I'm going to be watching. And here's what's going to be happening. Each year in October, the Sports Car Club of America holds their national championships. Unlike the Indianapolis 500, an event in which just one type of car competes, in sports car racing there is a staggering diversity of cars. Some are barely changed from vehicles you would drive on the street, while others are pure racing machines. In all, there are 27 classes, and it can be extremely valuable publicity for a manufacturer to have its car win its class here. Even non-automotive companies sponsor cars, with the result that many of the teams are heavily backed, and competition is, on occasion, anything but gentlemanly. I'm particularly interested in two classes. For the record, they're known as C Production and B Sedan. But really, these are designations which would be interesting only to the most avid sports car enthusiasts. What makes these classes interesting to me is that they promise to offer exceptionally close racing. And another thing that's kind of intriguing, Paul Newman is entered in both classes. Like each of the other competitors here, Newman earned his invitation to Road Atlanta by first being a winner in one of the Sports Car Club's 7 regional championships. In Newman's case, he campaigned in the Northeast, and one of his most dramatic races came at Lime Rock in Connecticut. Driving the 200SX, he was involved in this incident on the straight, where he miraculously avoided damage to his car. And when the race was stopped to allow rescue crews to clear the track, Newman chatted casually with his mechanics. When the race resumed, it was a thriller, with Newman battling tooth and nail in an epic that ended in this incredible finish, which Newman won.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there are things that are work, but racing is something else. That's, it's personal, and it's very, very individual, and it's something that I do and I have fun. Like, you can't go back and say, well, that was take 1, you know, now try take 2. And say, no, take 1 is the only take we got, kid, that's it.
It's fun to watch Newman, not only because he's an exciting driver, but also because it's fascinating to see someone so well known involve himself in something where his fame and his expertise is no help at all. Newman, however, is not alone in this. Of his toughest opponents vying for the national championship, 2 men, Logan Blackburn and Jim Fitzgerald, both work at jobs wholly unrelated to racing. For Blackburn, racing is primarily a weekend sport.
I own my own business. We distribute printing equipment and supplies all over the state of Indiana.
Blackburn says his hobby can be an asset to his business, but he concedes that during the season, it keeps him busy.
I am pretty much the team manager and the driver. During the summer months particularly, it takes a fair amount of time away from business.
Blackburn has been extremely successful as a driver. And this year has been no exception. Coming into Atlanta, he has won 7 out of 8 races. Even more important to his confidence is that he won this race last year.
This year, after winning last, the pressure is really off, and I think that gives me an edge.
By contrast, Jim Fitzgerald feels he's long overdue at Road Atlanta.
As you're aware, we've been a bridesmaid so many times here. We've won it once. The one time we've won it is similar to what's happening with us this year.
Like both Newman and Blackburn, Fitzgerald makes his living at a job which is unrelated to racing. In fact, you'd never guess at the secret passions of this middle-aged executive. His work is with Western Electric, where he is a research engineer, a demanding profession. But there's an occasional moment to reflect on his hobby, which, he admits, is expensive.
It's a wild mistress to have this as a hobby. You know, I probably could support 2 women in place of this damn automobile.
Of the 4 men who have the best shot at the C production race, only one works regularly with cars. Frank Leary is a mechanic whose talents have made him the shop foreman at a prominent sports car center. Based in Santa Clara, California, Leary specializes in the maintenance of high-performance cars.
When things don't go well, it's quite a apparent advantage to be technically oriented with your car. If you got a problem or if you see a problem with a competitor's car, you can take better advantage of it if you're mechanically oriented. I am the most expensive ingredient in my race program. The services I personally supply are what run you into the hole. Well, winning here could probably make a big turning point in my career as driving and with cars. I don't want to get too hungry or too desperate because that could put me out of contention as well as anything else. That I'm trying to keep myself tempered, but definitely I'm up for this more than any other event I've ever been to.
What these 4 men do so well, race driving, is an activity which demands a certain athletic prowess. You need sharp eyes, fast reflexes, and a delicate sense of balance. But above all, this is a sport which requires mental acuity. From the moment the car pulls out onto the track, the driver must concentrate 100%. In a practice session such as this, the first couple of laps will be spent warming the car up and checking the instruments to make sure the vital signs of the engine are okay. The driver will be familiarizing himself with the track and seeking to establish the right spots to shift and brake. This is an analytical phase, and his mind is still working much the same way it would even if he wasn't in the car. But as the speed is increased, the time the driver has in which to make his decisions is drastically compressed. As the turns come up faster and faster, he must react instinctively, making a dozen critical decisions every second. As the driver nears the absolute limit at which he can lap the track, he will lose the sense of speed. To him, the onrushing turns will be presented as a sequence or a pattern available for his almost casual inspection. It's an exhilarating thing to try to push yourself and your car to a perfect lap. But you must also be able to maneuver when the race is on and there are other cars close to you. Coping with traffic this way on the race course enormously complicates the driver's task, because not only does he have to keep driving flat out, which demands full concentration, but he must play a high-speed chess game at the same time. To be a winner, a driver has to be a master tactician, able to pass his rivals and also to keep them from passing him. It was on a beautiful autumn day in Georgia that the first of the 1978 National Championship races were held. As the cars in the B sedan category were wheeled down to the grid, the skies were clear and the temperature in the mid-70s. The beautiful Road Atlanta track was in top shape as the cars pulled out for the pace lap. This was the first of the 2 events in which Paul Newman would race, and he was qualified in 4th position. Stu Fisher, last year's national champion in this class, had made the fastest time in qualifying and was on the pole. Next to him on the front row, Dave Frelson was driving a car so new that it was barely finished in time to qualify for Road Atlanta. As the field swept downhill toward the green flag, Fisher in the white car took the lead. But Frelson on the far right and George Alderman on the left both made superb starts. But as they rushed through the first turn, Alderman slid off the track, and in the confusion, Brelson's Datsun passed Fisher's Mazda and took the lead. Snaking down through the S's, Brelson really poured it on. Alderman had recovered quickly and was pressing Fisher. Newman was a strong fourth. Coming into the hairpin, Brelson, driving brilliantly, was extending his lead. Fisher was second, with Alderman right on his bumper when the two appeared to touch, and Fisher's Mazda went into a spin. Newman got by safely, moving into third. Searching in vain for a break in the traffic, Fisher was forced to wait until the entire field had streamed by. He resumed the race dead last. As they roared down the long Road Atlanta straight on the first lap, Brelson had a clear lead, but behind him, two cars fanned out beside Newman in the battle for second. As they completed the first lap, with Brelson leading, the pattern of the race was established. Brelson maintained his lead, but was unable to draw further away from his pursuers, and his margin of victory at the end was little more than the lead that he had after that first hectic lap. As Brelson took the checkered flag, his crew celebrated the victory. Behind him, Frank Carney finished second, and Paul Newman, after a steady drive, was third. As Dave Brelson pulled into victory lane, he was exuberant. What made his win so remarkable was that Brelson's car was, in effect, brand new. His competitors had run their cars all summer and were completely familiar with them, but Brelson had managed to overcome that advantage with brilliant driving and tenacity. It's Sunday afternoon, and the C production race is only moments away. Every driver here is well aware, because the race is so short, the start may be critical. Dave Brelson made a great start, and it paid off with a national championship. Paul Newman was third in that race, and now he has a second shot at the win. Because the fastest cars get to start at the front of the grid, qualifying was hotly contested. Surprising even himself with his speed as he took pole position was Logan Blackburn. The defending champion drove so fast in the first of the 2 days of qualifying that on the second day, he was content to leave his car in the garage and watch the others struggle to equal his mark. Coming closest to Blackburn's speed was Frank Leary, whose time qualified him to start the race alongside Blackburn on the front row of the grid. Paul Newman was third and will start right behind Blackburn. For Jim Fitzgerald, though, qualifying was a disaster. He wound up sixth.
I'm sixth, a despairing sixth almost. I just felt like I was Jackie Stewart and Moss all rolled into one, and maybe even a bit of Andretti, and I was slower than I've ever been.
As the cars pulled out for the pace lap, Fitzgerald knew that if he was going to have any chance at all, he had to get a brilliant start.
I'll chance my engine on a start, and if I have just a slight jump, just if I get my nose in, that's it.
On the front row of the grid, Frank Leary's thoughts were focused on the man next to him, Logan Blackburn.
Logan, I think, is hurting. I think he lost his good motor. He also knows that he's got to save this motor, and he's not running it as hard as he might. But I also know that last year he didn't do too much until the green flag waved in the race, and he took off like a shot.
Leary had also been quoted in the local press as saying he wouldn't mind following Blackburn in the early laps. And that attitude seemed to dovetail nicely with Blackburn's own plan, which was to lead right from the start if he could.
It's a short race. It's a sprint race. There's no second chance. This is for everything. I would need to pass Frank before the S's so that my handling advantage through the S's would come into play. And
Blackburn was concerned primarily with Leary. He worried less about Paul Newman, who was starting on the row behind him. Indeed, Newman himself was conservative about his plans for the start. And unlike the drivers around him, Newman had not made an elaborate plan for the race.
Screw the strategy. So you screw your head up, with a lot of strategies in which the scenarios simply don't exist. So wait a minute, none of the scenarios that I wrote last night exist here today. So now what do?
As they sweep along the last part of the straight, with just moments now to go before the start, Newman had one last observation about the track on which he and his rivals were about to race.
This track is very deceptive. I'm not certain that there are ways, if you get into trouble, that you can still correct and make a very fast line out of your own mistake. But
here they come down the hill to get the flag. Fitzgerald's already accelerating. The race is on. Blackburn's had a good start, and Leary's right with him. Fitzgerald's crowding Newman in the second row. He's making the start he knew he had to make. They're into the first turn, Blackburn leading, and Fitzgerald's in trouble. He's in the dirt, and there's another car involved. Turn 2, Logan Blackburn leads, and Frank Leary is second. Newman's third. That's Casey Millette of California in fourth, with Jim Fitzgerald, who lost a place with that slide, right behind him. Coming into the S's, Blackburn's ahead, and watch out, this is the part of the track where he's had the biggest advantage over the others. He said he wanted to have a clear track here so he could pull away from Leary, and he's doing it. There's Newman in third. Look at the lead Blackburn has pulled out thanks to his speed in the S's. Leary's second and Newman third, with Casey Millette having a great drive right behind him. Here come the two leaders on the straightaway. Logan Blackburn just ahead of Frank Leary. This is where Leary's horsepower is going to pay off. He is closing slightly on Logan Blackburn at this point. And look at that battle for third. Newman is third, but just by a whisker. Jim Fitzgerald is making a move on Casey Millette. There go the leaders. There's Fitzgerald. He's got Millette now, and he's inside of Newman. They sweep down that last turn. Jim Fitzgerald's taken Paul Newman. He's running third. At the end of the first lap, Blackburn's ahead with Leary following him. That was Leary's plan, to follow. And incredibly, Fitzgerald has managed to do what he said he had to do to have a chance, which is to get up into third. A terrible lap for Newman, though. He's back to fifth. Here's Blackburn pulling away in the S's. This could be a classic battle. Blackburn superior in the turns and Leary on the straights. Blackburn's still leading, but look at Leary. He's got the power all right. Blackburn's going to have to block him to keep from being passed. Wow, Leary's right behind. This is going to hurt Blackburn because he's being forced to drive defensively, trying to block Leary instead of concentrating on pure speed. But as they come onto the straight, it's going to be tough to block, and Leary's pulling out. He's going right by Logan Blackburn. Frank Leary has taken the lead. Blackburn closes up under braking, but there's no way Leary's going to let him by. Look at how close Fitzgerald is. He's well ahead of Millette and Newman as they break for the... Look at that! Newman's been hit. Newman takes a terrific hit, but it looks as if he's okay. There's Leary leading, but Blackburn's dropping back, and Fitzgerald's definitely closer. Here comes Blackburn, and Fitzgerald's passing him easily. He's second now. Taking nothing from Fitzgerald, who's having a sensational race, there's obviously something wrong with Blackburn's engine. He just can't make it down the straight with his previous speed. So, as the leaders complete another lap, Frank Leary continues in front, now with Fitzgerald second and the ailing Logan Blackburn third. Millette is fourth, but wait! Paul Newman's making a move on him as they go into turn one. Newman's got him! Paul Newman takes over fourth. Frank Leary comes by with a huge lead. He is way out in front at this point. On another part of the track, Newman has just passed Logan Blackburn for third. Newman is really on the move now. You see him, he's just behind Jim Fitzgerald there. And there's Newman now right with Fitzgerald as they go up under the bridge. Newman has really been moving since he was hit earlier in the race. He had planned to be cautious at the start, and he may have underestimated the blistering pace that would be set in this race. But he's come on strong, and here he is alongside Fitzgerald. This is the battle for second. Newman gets him. He's second. Now both Fitzgerald and Newman share the distinction of having charged from sixth up to second in this race. And Newman has a good chance to make it stick. It's been just the opposite story, though, for Logan Blackburn, who's fallen steadily from first back to fifth. Paul Newman has pulled well clear of Jim Fitzgerald, who's beginning to show some evidence of engine trouble. There's Newman, and here's Fitzgerald. He's in trouble. His engine's blown, and he's sliding in his own oil. It's been apparent for several laps that he has been in some sort of difficulty, but with the race so near to the end, I never doubted that he'd finish. And there goes Blackburn. It looks as if his race is over also. What changing fortunes this man has experienced. With his rivals having fallen by the wayside, Frank Leary now has a clear lead. Here he is, working on his last lap. He's driven without mistakes, and equally important, the engine he himself built for this race has performed flawlessly. And here he comes to take the checkered flag. Frank Leary has won the race. Of the 4 men who had the best chance here, only Leary worked regularly on cars. And today, the totality of that dedication has paid off. Paul Newman finishes second.
He was driving that beautiful red, white, and blue Datsun prepared by Bob Sharp Racing.
Frank, you told us that you wouldn't mind driving along behind Logan Blackburn at the outset. Were you following a plan, or was he just faster then?
I actually felt like I was following a plan. I felt like I'd pushed the car a little bit harder and might have been able to pass him in the start. That's not what I wanted to do because it would have been really iffy. So I pulled in behind him, followed him. He threw up a cloud of dirt one time from the forward cars that was so bad I didn't want to drive through it full throttle, so I braked through it. And that opened up a gap for a while. I had a decided advantage down the front straight. Just, I don't know, arms and legs better than he did. And I followed him for a while, and literally I got tired of following him, so I passed him.
But you'd been worried a little bit at the beginning of the race about your brakes and also a little about the engine, but there was no trouble from either?
Absolutely no. Both performed fantastically. With a little help from the driver, we'll finish first next year.
It was a very beautiful drive. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Road Atlanta 1978 is over. For Jim Fitzgerald, the race may have resulted in a blown engine, but his brilliant drive gave him the taste of what it would be like to win. He'll be back. Logan Blackburn was frustrated that his bid to defend his title was unsuccessful. But like any racing veteran who has lost before, he knows there's always another race. Paul Newman's 2 finishes, a 3rd and a 2nd place, prove once again that he is a driver of national championship caliber. Frank Leary did what he set out to do. His victory at Road Atlanta is surely the first major step in fulfilling his aspirations.